My mic's not nice. Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to here. Let's see your favorite emojis. So if you know people who ought to be here, like some of us are not excited. I can't see chats. I can't see emojis. So good morning, everyone. Because of our schedule, we just kick-started. So my name is Chidima Iguanu. I am a member of Crystal Digital, one of the fastest growing IT companies in Nigeria. We've serviced a lot of companies, including the private organizations, the federal government, and then there is a lot of establishments. We are partners with Microsoft, we're partners with Lingo Plus, we're partners with the European Union body, and then a lot of other organizations that we cannot mention here. But it's a great privilege to have everyone here on board. So I'll say welcome to a journey that is one of what that's going to change our lives, right? So I believe we all know why we're here, but I'll give you a brief about the project. This is a free graphic design training that is going to be scheduled for, we mentioned it's going to run for 4 months, but the long-term plan is that it's actually going to run for 6 months because after your training, we have plans to include you in mentorship. We also have plans to include you in our partner organizations for internship. And then finally, we have plans to also, introduce you to the job market. So I'll run down quickly what we ought to achieve together on this project. So first and foremost, we want to empower each and every one of us because we know that the world is growing what's digital. We have a lot of people who are looking to learn skills that can help them to become labor ready. We want you guys to be employers of labor. We want you guys to be able to teach others and then set up your own organizations and then also do bigger things. So that's why we're having this project. So I believe that each and every one of you here, you may be busy, you may be working, you may be self-employed, or you're just looking to learn additional skill. I'll implore you to take it seriously because at the end of this program, you would be having a globally recognized certificate. So we'll be giving that to people who have actually proven themselves. Out of the number of people who applied for this project, we had a number of, I think, over 1,000 plus applicants, and then we shortlisted just 200 people. So it's a privilege to be here. All right, somebody's saying he can't hear me. Olusegun Busu. Can every other person hear me? Can every other person hear me? All right, so Bosun is actually from your own end. So like I said before, my name is Chidima Igboanlu. I'll be facilitating a lot of the sessions. Then I also want to talk about our instructors. Our instructors are people who are very, very experienced. So they're not just going to teach you the theoretical parts. They'll be teaching you hands-on experience. So that's why we have just 1 week of our virtual classes, and then we have what, 3 good weeks of our physical classes where you get to learn graphics design hands-on. So the program is going to encompass number one, Corel Draw. You'll be learning Adobe Photoshop. You'll be learning Adobe Illustrators. So even before the end of the program, you can begin to do things for people. You can begin to run projects or take on personal plans that you can use to what empower yourself. So you'll be talking directly with our instructors afterwards. We have Mauro Martins. Mr. Mauro Martins has a decade of experience in graphics design. We also have Mr. Trust, we have Mr. Joseph. These are going to be your facilitators, and they will be teaching you details about what you need to know about graphics design. You learn the rudiments, the foundation, and then you learn the practical skill that you need to set up yourself. So please, for the benefit of this class, we have groups, WhatsApp groups that have been set up. So in the course of the teaching, we'll drop the link on the chat box. Please be on the lookout for it. So you could just need to click on the link and automatically it will take you to the WhatsApp group. Then afterwards, at the end of this week, we'll divide everybody, our participants, into 2 groups where we have the first cohort and then we have the second cohort. That way we'll be able to manage us properly so that we can all learn effectively. So if you have questions, feel free to drop it in the chat box. Our instructors and facilitators are all on the ground to respond to them. And then if you need to reach out to us for something else that is maybe concerning the program, feel free to use the email address that's been provided for you in the emails you all got. If you also have complaints on the emails or you did not get any information, feel free to send an email or to reach out to anyone. So you can always drop it on the chat box. So our classes will run from 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sorry, for the rest of this week. So please and please, we encourage you to participate. We encourage you to ask questions. We encourage you to take notes and then learn effectively. So I'll hand over to our instructors so that they can commence today's class. Thank you for joining this program and we hope you have a good time. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. My name is Joseph. I'm a graphic designer. I will be your instructor and facilitator for today and the rest of the week for the theoretical classes. So you might be wondering, why do we have to do theories before we go into the practical aspect, before we dive into Photoshop and start designing and everything, right? So I'll tell you this, every building, every structure has a foundation. And for design, that foundation is the theoretical aspect because it gives us a deep dive into what to expect in the softwares, into how we can have the basics. It tells us the basics of what we need to do and helps us to understand every structure, every principle, every element before we start designing, right? So for today, we'll cover principles of design, fundamentals of design as well. For the rest of the week, we'll also cover typography, we'll cover color theory, we'll cover layout and composition, how to get the best images to use for your designs, and we'll touch little on the interface of each design softwares and how to use them and what they are used for. All right, so for today, let's quickly go into our class. We'll start with understanding the principles of design. Now, you might be wondering, what are the principles of design? Simply put, they are rules that helps guide your design. They help you decide what's right from what's wrong, what should be in your design and what shouldn't be, right? So they are set rules, they just guide you. They guide you to do the right things, put the right elements in place so that your design can come out very well. Now, before we go into the principles of design, I want you to just have a brief understanding on what graphic design is. So if you can see my screen, you see a very simple definition of graphic design. It is the use of text and graphics to communicate visually, which means that a graphic design is meant to communicate. And if it does not communicate, it is actually not doing what it's supposed to do, right? Now, for the principles of design, when you use them effectively, they have the ability to transform your design, both aesthetically and to also draw attention to your audience. So the first principle we'll talk about today would be unity. Now, Alex White, the author of The Elements of Graphic Design, explains that to achieve visual unity, the main goal of a graphic design is to achieve visual unity. Now, when all elements are in agreement, a design is considered unified because unity is a force that operates within a design. It gives it the appearance, it gives it the oneness and resolution, and it ensures that no single part is more important than the other, right? Now, this is a very simple example of unity. Now, you can see the unity in same color on the first image on the left, and you see variety in different sizes. That's how you see that there are big sizes and small sizes of the images. Now, on the right side, you see the unity in the same size, but variety in different colors. Now, in your design, this can be a logo, this can be a text, this can be an image, different things. It doesn't have to be circles like this in your design. I hope you understand. So the next principle is balance. Now, balance plays a major role in every design because every element you place on a design has weight. So the weight can be the color, it can be the size of the elements, it could be the texture. Just like you would not put all your furniture in one part of a room, so because it will look clustered. The same thing in design. You don't put all your elements in a particular part of the page, right? So because of that balance, there are symmetrical balance and asymmetrical balance. For symmetrical, it helps to put the weight to balance the weights on both sides. So maybe on the left and on the right, the same elements, but shared evenly on both sides, right? Now, asymmetrical just uses the direct opposite of that. It could be different elements and different sizes. It could be a picture on the left and text on the right. It helps you to see, to be able to read through the design, right? Now, look at on the next slide, you see what I'm talking about. Now, see the symmetrical balance. You see it's the same set of objects on both right and left, but they are aligned together. They are in the same balance form. But on the right, which is asymmetrical, you see that there's a bigger shape and a smaller shapes on the side. So that's the difference. So there are certain designs where the symmetrical principle of balance comes to play. And there are other designs where the asymmetrical comes to play. So you, the designer, when designing, you decide after looking at the content, maybe a flyer, maybe a business card, you decide that, okay, this should be symmetrically aligned or this should be asymmetrical, right? Now, the next one is hierarchy. Hierarchy is one of the most important principles in design because it just gives rank to everything. Now, if you look at this page, it shows a perfect definition of hierarchy because hierarchy helps you to tell what comes before what. Now, if you look at this page, the first thing you see is hierarchy, the text hierarchy here. That's because that's what I want you to see. So hierarchy helps the reader to be able to read, to move their eyes from one part of the design to the other, right? Now, it's not based on a design style, but it's based on order of importance. Do you get? It could be a business card, it could be a flyer, it could be a brochure, it could be a magazine, but hierarchy still plays a major part in every design. It's a good rule, for Tom, the hierarchy is your most important element and should be the most prominent. Now, when I go to the next slide in the example, you see what I'm talking about. Now, look at this page. On the left side of the page, you see no hierarchy. That's because everything is evenly distributed in size, right? But on the right side, you see that there are some shapes that are bigger than the others, and some lines are different in colors. That's what hierarchy means. So let's say this is a newspaper. The first thing on that top part would be the header of the newspaper, big. So you get to see that, okay, this is whatever brand of newspaper this is. Then the topic comes in and every other details. So you see how hierarchy is very important. If everything is the same size, like the way it is on the left, there will be an issue. Now, I also want you to note something. You also note that there is unity and there's balance and there's hierarchy in this. That's how the principles of design come into play in every single design that you do, every single one of it. Now, the next is contrast. You know, when somebody says a design pops, contrast is what does that job. Contrast is what makes it pop. Contrast just help you differentiate between light and dark, left, right, what should be and what shouldn't be, slim lines, thick lines, bright spaces, dull spaces, even in colors, right? So it's just a difference between two objects in a design. That's what contrast is. And it helps for readability, it helps for legibility, it also helps for accessibility. Like hierarchy, the most important element in a design should have the most contrast. Now, remember the previous slide where I talked about having the title of the magazine or the newspaper or the flyer or anything on this part of the design. Now, that should have a different feel and a different color, a different weight from every other thing else that you can see here. So that's what contrast does. Contrast helps to create that balance between two objects, two or more objects, actually. So a bright blue button on a stark white background with a lot of white space is considered high contrast. If the button was almost the same color as the background or was 1% stroke versus a fill, it would have less contrast. So contrast creates space and difference between elements in your design. Your background needs to be significant in difference from the color of your elements so that they work harmoniously together, because you don't want to put the same color of background for the same color of the text. If you even look at my slide, you can see that there is contrast. There's a white space, there's a colored space, there's a white text on the colored. Imagine if this text on the colored space is the same color, or it's blue, or something that just doesn't fit well. It would give off a different kind of feel, right? Now, contrast comes in different forms. You know, I said it can be light and dark, it can be thick or thin, it can be small or large, bright or dull. Now, these are a few examples of contrast. So there's contrast in shape from the top, from the left part, you see contrast in shape, different shapes. You see a circle and you see a star with so many shapes, so many sides. Now, there's contrast in color as well. Like I said, white or black, vibrant or dull. There's contrast in color. Then there's contrast in scale. Scale refers to the sizes. There's contrast in scale. Then there's contrast in layout. Now, as time goes on into all the practical aspects of the class that you take in, you get to understand, you get to see all these things come into play in your designs from time to time. But make sure you're taking notes so you can understand. So when you see it, you understand. And also, I want to let you know that as a designer, the way you see things are way different from the ordinary person. I always tell people a designer is the eye of the community. Why? Because when people are looking at and seeing a field of grass, you could be seeing something else. You could be seeing ideas. You could be seeing a different thing entirely. That's because the graphic designer is the eye of the community and he sees things differently. Now, when you start to see other set of designs, you get to understand clearly. You get to see these elements, these principles in play. The next principle is emphasis. Just as the name implies, emphasis is created by size, by weight, position, color, shape, and style. Now, if you look at the slide again, you see that where the emphasis is on the text emphasis. That's the emphasis. Now, there's also emphasis on the color of the shape around the text, right? Now, a simple example is a long hallway or a corridor where your eye is drawn to the end of that hallway. Now, imagine painting a bright wall at the end. That becomes your emphasis, your focal point, because that's what emphasis does. It takes your eye to the exact direction of where you should be. Now, contrast deals with difference in sizes, but emphasis deals with the impact of the objects. To make it a little less confusing, you can use contrast to support the emphasis of an object, like placing a solid black sphere on a white background. This is high contrast with emphasis. The viewer's eyes is drawn directly to the heavy shape. Just as you look at the slide, the first thing you see is the white space and the text emphasis, right? Now, this is how emphasis works. From the left, you see a lot of black shapes and a red shape. That red shape is the first thing you see when you look at that. That is the emphasizing thing. And if you notice it's red, while every other thing is black, that is contrast and emphasis in play. You can also see that they are balanced, right? Now, the second image there shows you different shapes in a different arrangement, but you can still see the focal point is the red shape because that's the first thing that catches your attention. Same thing on the last one. The first thing you see is the red shape. So emphasis is used to create focal points. In an advert where you want people to see buy now and win 500K, buy now and stand a chance to win a house. That should be emphasized and bigger and have contrast, right? Now, the next principle is scale. Scale is just as the name implies. It's how you increase or reduce elements in your design. Now, it can be used in combination with other principles, like emphasis to draw the viewers into the focal point and helps us make sense of designs or imagery. If something is drawn to scale, it shows an object with accurate sizing, though it could be reduced or enlarged from its actual size. Do you get it? Scale just helps you reduce or increase elements in your design, maybe a text, increase or reduce, maybe an image or an illustration, or maybe the logo, make it bigger. it creates a way to depict objects as larger than life. So you see how each principle works hand in hand, because when you increase an object, you scale it. Now, in scaling that object, you have created emphasis. If you change the color of that object, it becomes, you have created what? Contrast. You see, so they work hand in hand. It's not like every principle is independent of the other. They work hand in hand. They make the design come to life. So there's scale in size, there's scale in ratio, there is scale in division. It could be from small size to big size. It could be from big size to small size, depending on what you want and what your design is about. Now, ratio, it could be different shapes and different sizes. Same thing for division. You just have to decide how you want it to be, where you want it to be. Now, the next thing is repetition. A lot of times, people mistake repetition for patterns. In other words, repetition is actually used to create patterns, right? So you can actually call it pattern, but it's called repetition because pattern is just creating, it's just repeating an object or an element so many times to create something. But repetition could be reoccurring. Now, it is commonly utilized in patterns and or texture, like I said. Okay. Repetitive elements can be used in conjunction with other principles to create a design that leads a user's eye to a focal point. And it has continuity. It has a flow, which means you don't just repeat it and leave it. You repeat it, it takes the reader to a certain point. That's the reason why you're repeating it, right? It could be in lines, it could be in shapes, it could be in forms, it could be in color. So you could repeat a color, you could repeat a shape, you could repeat a form, you could repeat an element, or even other graphics in your design, probably an illustration or something. You can repeat it. Repetition. I already mentioned that it works mainly with patterns and texture because they are repeated. Now, see the perfect example. You can see all the same shapes repeated in the same size, evenly distributed. Now, the red part is a repetition of color, but you can see that it creates a different direction. When you look at it now, you see a form of zigzag from the beginning, from the left to the right. That's how repetition works. Now, this is a simple pattern. This is a simple pattern, right? The next principle is white space. White space is a very interesting principle simply because white space doesn't have to be white. I know that's funny. It can also be referred to as negative space. It's just the areas in a design that do not include any element. There are no patterns on white space. There are no text on white space. There are no image, nothing, no logo, no watermark. The space is effectively empty. Effectively empty. Now, many designers feel the need to pack every element, every shape, every pattern into their designs because they want it to look very nice, or because they are worried that there's too much space in their design, right? But white space allows a design to breathe. Negative space can also help highlight specific content or specific part of a design. Remember, I said white space can also be referred to as negative space. So when I say negative space, don't think I'm saying something else. It's also white space. Okay. Now, it can also make elements of a design easier to read, easier to discern, easier to understand. This is why typography is more legible when upper and lowercase letters are used, since negative space is more varied around lowercase letters, which allows people to interpret with them more quickly. Now, I have a perfect example of white space. This right here is a very good example of white space. So if you look at the design, okay, give me a minute. There is something on my screen. Let me quickly take that off. Okay. All right. So now you can see the design here. This is the famous iPhone 15 Pro website. Now you're wondering, there are lots of space on the left, lots of space on the right, and everything. There's just a little picture of the phone that displays the back, the side, the camera, and just a little text in the middle part of the design. All the space to the left and all the space to the right are known as negative space or white space. Now, I specifically picked this image because you remember I said white space doesn't have to be white. White space can be yellow, white space can be green, can be any color. The name white space just shows that there's nothing on that space. It is an empty space, right? Now, you might be asking, why do all these principles, why do they matter? Why are they important? You know, in the beginning, I said, these principles help us to know what's right and what's wrong. And I'm sure if we recap each principle, you see, you look at them differently and look at designs differently now to say, oh, okay, this makes more sense. This should be there. This should be reduced. This should be bigger. This should have the emphasis. This should have the hierarchy. This should have contrast. Because you now understand the principles. Every piece of work is made up, every piece of design is made up of elements and principles. And those principles, when combined correctly, like I said, it commands the users or the audience's attention, and it's hard to ignore, right? So that would be all for the principles of design. We'll move now into the fundamentals of design. If you have any questions for principles of design, you could jot them down or drop them in the chat box. I will respond to all the questions at the end of the session. Okay? Now, fundamentals of design. Now you might be thinking, principles or fundamentals, what are the difference? Do they make any difference? What difference does it make? Just a minute. Okay. So, fundamentals of design are foundation of every visual medium, from fine art to modern web design. All the fundamentals have been in place. Now you're wondering, fine art, web design, they are all forms of art, and they all use these fundamentals. They are even present in seemingly unimportant details like the fonts that make up most compositions. When we dive into the fundamentals fully, you get to understand the last part of that text clearly. Now, what do these examples have in common? Some very basic elements, including lines, shape, form, texture, and balance. They might not seem much on their own, but together they are a part of almost everything we see and everything we create. The first element is line. You can see the scribbling. The next element is shape. This is an example of a shape. This is a triangle here. And you can see form. Then you can see texture. Now you might be wondering, where's balance? If you see that they are all on a form of line that looks like a scale, that's the work of balance, right? Now, these fundamentals can be intimidating at first. You might be wondering, I just finished understanding principles. How do I need to understand the fundamentals? Don't worry. Now, but just keep an open mind. There's a lot that you can learn about working with different assets and creating simple designs from scratch when you understand these fundamentals. Now, the first one is line. I'm sure we all see lines everywhere. Everywhere we go, we see lines. On the road, in our classes, maybe in church, in school, anywhere, you see lines. Now, a line is a shape that connects two or more points. You can see point 1, point 2. Every line here has point 1 and point 2. It can be fat, it can be thin, it can be wavy, it can be dotted, it can be jagged. The list is endless, really, because lines come in different forms. Every possibility gives the line a slightly different feel. Just the way the first line is different from the second line, the same way the second line is different from the third line, which is wavy. The same way all the lines here are different from each other, right? Now, look at this. Lines appear frequently in design. For example, in drawings and illustrations, and they are also common in graphic elements like texture. Lines play parts in texture. Lines are used to create patterns. Remember what we talked about repetition. And you can use lines for your backgrounds as well. Now, look at this image right here. You can see the image of the lady is an illustration done with lines. It's just an outline. And the shape in which the image is placed in is also a line. Now, look at the pattern behind on the top part. It's also made of lines. Guess what? The typography is also made up of lines. Now, lines can be used in more serious natured compositions too, like organizations to drive home emphasis or just for decoration, like you saw in the previous edits. Now, look at this table here, this organizational chart. You can see from the CEO, you just know. Line helps you to direct your eye. So it gives a direction. It helps you to tell, okay, after this, what comes next? Should I go left or should I go right? Or should I go right or should I go left? The line does that for you, right? Now, when working with lines, pay attention to their weight, pay attention to their color, pay attention to the texture of the line, and pay attention to the style of the line. These subtle qualities can have a very big impact on the way your design is perceived. Is either because the way it works now, look at this. Imagine this organizational chart. These lines on it is actually this textured line. It will pass a different message entirely. Or imagine if it's this wavy line. that is used for this. It gives a complete different message. It becomes decorative. You cannot now tell if this is a serious company or they are just joking. Do you get? So every element, every fundamental, every principle play a major role on how your design is perceived. People might see it and be like, is this for kids or is it for adults? And you might be wondering, it's for adults. But guess what? Just the simple misuse of an element or a fundamental, just using the wrong line could change how the design is perceived. The next fundamental is shape. Now, shape is any two-dimensional area with a recognizable boundary, right? Shape has to have a boundary. So you can tell that, okay, there's no opening. And the various shapes, we know them: circles, squares, triangle, trapezium, kite, cone, cylinder, lots and lots of shapes. And guess what? They come to play in design as well. Shapes are also very important because they are the foundation of so many things. Learn to look for them in other designs and you soon start seeing them everywhere, right? Now, shapes can be organic, shapes can be geometric. Geometric just means regular, and organic just shapes that are free form. You can see the difference. The geometric shapes have more sharper edges, they look more defined. Now, the organic shapes, they are just free, like scribbled shapes. Take an example in biology, the amoeba, the very funny organisms, they take organic shape, right? That also applies in design. Now, this is a perfect example here. I'm sure if you ever passed a road, you would have seen a stop sign. It's just made of a shape and text. And then it always has that red sign, that red color rather, to give that contrast, to give that emphasis on stop. I mean, just stop. And then on your mobile phones, I'm sure you've seen your text icons, you've seen the art, even the phone icon, maybe the different logo of the social media platforms you use. They are all made of shapes. Everything. Right now, even your mobile phone is made of a shape. Your laptop computer or your desktop made of shapes. The calendar, the desk, the seat, the notepad you have, even my glasses are made of shapes. So, like I said before, you just have to understand that these things are everywhere. Remember, the graphic designer is the eye of the community. Someone else is seeing very nice glasses. You, the designer, are seeing two circles and two lines. Make sense? Now, shapes have surprisingly number of uses in everyday design. They can help you organize a separate content, or they can help you create illustrations, or just add some interesting feature to your work. Remember, patterns can be created with shapes. You see that. Now, see how many shapes you can spot in the image below. Now, you can send on the chat box and tell me quickly how many shapes you can see on this design here. The classic Sun T design. How many shapes can you see? 5, 7, 2. How many? Anybody? 6. Most people say they can see 6 shape. 7. Somebody saw 5. 5, 7, 6, and a lot of 7. Okay, let's count it together. Now, there is the circle that shows the shape of a fruit. That's 1. There is the cup. That's 2. There is the form of ice boxes inside of it. That's 3. There is the whole of this yellow space. That's 4. Then the patterns here are created by shapes. That's 5. Then there is this guy over here, and there's a rectangle. That's 6. Then you see circles used to highlight the numbers. That's 7. Now, remember, circle, circle, that makes 1. Triangle, triangle, that makes 2. Square, square, that makes 3. This is a cone and a square, that makes 5. So the people that have 5 shapes, correct. All right. So the next fundamental is form. When a shape becomes 3D, we call it form. Forms make up a variety of things in the real world. It could be sculpture, it could be architecture, or other three-dimensional objects. Remember, your mobile phone is three-dimensional, so it has form. The cup or your mug is three-dimensional, it has form, right? However, forms don't have to be three-dimensional. It can be two-dimensional and still have form. They can also be implied through illustrations using techniques like light, shadow, and perspective to create the illusion. Okay, now let's pause here for a bit. Before we go further, can anybody tell me one of the fundamentals we just talked about? We talked about 3 fundamentals already. Just tell me one of the fundamentals we talked about. Somebody saw 30 shapes in the previous image. Very interesting. Okay, I'm looking forward to lines, shape, form, balance. We have not gotten to balance yet, but lines, shape, form. Yeah, form, lines, shape. Okay. Contrast is from the principles. Okay, so can anyone list or explain one of the principles? If you can explain one of the principles, just raise up your hand so I could just unmute you. Anyone that can explain any of the principles? Okay, Tessie. All right, Tessie, you can speak. Tessie? Okay, give me a minute. I'm trying to unmute you so you speak. Just a minute. Okay. Coming. I'm still looking for Tessie. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Tessie, you can unmute yourself now.
Hello.
Okay, Bernard, you go after Tessie. Okay, so Tessie, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. From what I understand, line is what connects 2 points, and it can be in different forms. To just add meaning to it, lines can either be straight, they can be curvy, they can be wavy, they can point to a direction, and they can also help to separate different images. So lines are just to connect 2 points, and they are in different forms.
Okay, great, well done. Okay, Bernard, you can unmute. Thank you, Tessie.
Okay, so alignment is one of the principles of graphics design. It helps you place your texts, objects, and shapes in an organized manner. And they are divided into alignment can be divided into 4 places. There's the left alignment where the subjects are sitting on the left-hand side. There is the right alignment where the subjects are sitting on the right-hand side, and there is the center where the subjects are seated at the center. Then the justified alignment is when the subjects are seated on all sides of the alignment of all sides of the design.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard. Okay, any other person? Pick one of the principles we talked about. These are the principles we talked about. We talked about unity. We talked about balance, hierarchy, contrast, emphasis, scale, repetition, and white space. Now, you pick any of this and just briefly explain what you understand by it. Okay? Queen, you can go ahead. Queen, can you hear me? You can speak. Okay, I don't think Queen is.
White space. Can you hear me?
Okay.
I was
Go
speaking
on.
on white space. White spaces are
Okay.
negative spaces. And you said they are
Okay.
effectively empty.
Yeah.
That means they do not contain any element or objects. You also said they
Yes.
don't necessarily have to be a white space. They can take any other color, provided they do not contain any object or element.
Exactly. Nice one.
And
Thank
the
you so much.
importance of a white space is to command the reader's attention.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other person?
Yeah.
So nobody has to speak. Pick white space again. White space has been taken. Okay. So any other person?
Contrast.
Contrast. Who is speaking, please?
That's Peter.
Peter. Okay. Peter, you say contrast. All right. What do you understand by contrast?
It helps to differentiate light and dark, which make way to readability. It also setting balance between 2 objects in a graphic design.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Two more persons, then we'll continue with the class. Thank you, Peter.
The next one is scale.
Scale. Okay.
Yeah.
Who is speaking, please?
Ezine.
All right. So I think when you unmute yourself to speak, just tell us your name before you start. Okay. So Ezine, go on.
Okay, for scale, you said they are the standard of measurements, meaning that it implies on how we increase or reduce the size of our design. It could either be thick, it could just also be like the size, the ratio, the division of it, but it gives measurement to every of the elements we use.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ezine. Okay. One more person. Francis.
Yeah,
Good morning.
Okay, who is speaking? Good morning. Sorry, if you're not speaking, please kindly mute.
Yes, hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Who is speaking? Francis? Is that
All
you?
right, this is Francis. Yes.
Okay, great. Go on.
Yes. Emphasis is a way of making certain elements stand out from the, the project at hand, So where it helps to create a focal point, or a set of interest in the design. And it gets to attract the attention of the viewer,
Exactly. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we would go back to fundamentals of design now.
We've not talked about Unity.
Okay, touch on Unity. Let me hear you.
All right. So when you talk about Unity, you said is you stated that you need to achieve the visual of Unity. Is the main goal of it is when you have the graphic elements align or come together. Okay, you have some the elements in the graphics to come or be in agreement, as you put it. Okay.
Exactly. I like that choice of word, be in agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Femi.
All right, welcome.
Okay, so let's go back to fundamentals, right? We talked about lines. We talked about shape. We are talking about forms now. Now, if you look at the image we have here, the images, it's actually one image, but in two different representations. The one on top is a live image. That means it's a real picture. Now, the one below is an illustration of the real picture up there. Now, but both of them carries form. Both of them shows shadows. Both of them has a three-dimensional feel. Both of them shows light, and they both show perspective. But they are different kinds of images. This is a picture, and this is an illustration. If you look at them, you see that there's shadow. Shadow is one of the elements that creates form. You see a shadow on both of them. Light. Now, light and shadow work like words and opposites, because when light is reflected on something, it automatically casts what? A shadow. And then perspective. Perspective gives a direction to your eye. Remember when I talked about the hallway? Like you walk into an hallway, when you look down, you see that whatever is down there is smaller than what is closer to you. That's how perspective works. But when you get to that end of the hallway, you see that everything is the same size, evenly distributed in sizes, right? Now, let's go to an example of form. So in two-dimensional design, form makes the objects to become real. It makes realism a possibility. Without form, two-dimensional designs will just be flat. This circle here you see, it doesn't portray a circle. You can call it a ball now. Why? Because it has form. You can say it's not just an ordinary circle. You can say, oh, this is a ball because it has form, right? See an example. This is a shape without a form. When you add form, it becomes this, right? Now, two-dimensional designs, like I said, when form is added to them, they become three-dimensional, and they look real. See the first example in this image. This is a two-dimensional design, a two-dimensional illustration. But with the help of light and shadow, you can see it's giving off a three-dimensional feel. Same thing happens to this circle here. Look on the right side of the screen, you see an illustration, a complete flat illustration. But you see, with the help of shadow, you can tell that this knife pierced into the heart shape and comes out on the other side because there is shadow. Imagine that shadow is not there. It becomes very flat and you are trying to understand what's going on here. Under the ribbon where mom is written, there's a shadow. And you can see an artificial created light. The arrow on the edge of the heart shape, the white outline over there. That's to create light. That's how it works for two-dimensional and flat shapes. This one has more three-dimensional features. You can see the light on this is different from the light on this. But what? This is light and this is light. So you see that form plays a very huge role. Imagine your mobile phone without form. It will just be flat. You cannot tell if it has a side or if it has a bottom or a top. It will just be a rectangle shaped phone, except if your phone is a different shape. But anyway, get what I mean. Now, in everyday composition, the purpose of form is the same. Did you get that? The purpose of form is the same in every composition rather, but on a smaller scale. So for example, a simple shadow can create the illusion of layers or give an object a sense of place. Now that statement, look at this. Now look at this again. A simple shadow can create the illusion of form. Now, look at this perfect menu here: drip, coffee, and tea. Look at the cup below. You see it has a shadow. If you take that shadow away, it gives a flat feel, right? And if you take, and adding that shadow is what creates a sense of place. It makes it, you can now tell that this cup is sitting on something. It looks like it's sitting on a table, sitting on a desk, or maybe sitting on paper or a space. But you can now tell that this cup is placed on something. Without that shadow, that cup will be floating. It looks like it's a floating cup. You're now wondering what happened to gravity. But with this element called form, gravity can be restored, right? Now, basic forms can bring a touch of realism to your work, like I just explained, and that makes it a powerful tool. But when used in moderation, don't overdo it. Don't put shadow everywhere. Don't add light everywhere. Don't try to create perspective in everything. Just a little touch. Now, you can see that this design has a lot of white space, right? And everything is evenly distributed. That's balance. That's a symmetrical balance. Now, the next fundamental we'll be touching is texture. I'm sure you didn't remember that texture would fall into this category because it does. Now, look at the two images above again. You see that one of it is a real picture of a cactus plant, and the other one is an illustrated version of the same image, even though the illustrated version has the hand of somebody trying to touch the cactus plant. which is a dangerous thing. Don't do that. So texture is the physical quality of a surface. Touch your phone, touch your table, touch your seat, touch your wall. They all have texture. It can be part of a three-dimensional object or a two-dimensional object. Like the cactus plants you see there. The texture, when you touch it, is that it has sharp edges, which can be called rough. Or like I said, on the illustrated one, which looks very fine, but still don't touch it. That the form and everything in it and the texture gives it that feel that makes it look like it's real. But you can still tell that this is an illustration, right? See a very good example. You know, I said, touch your wall, your desk, your phone and everything, your seat. You see every different object has a different texture. Look at the chimney in this image here. It has like a brick-like texture. Look at the wood, has its own texture. The rug has its own texture. The wall, yeah, has its own texture. So texture can be smooth, texture can be rough, texture can be hard, or texture can be soft. Depending on the elements at play, texture comes in different capacity and different appearance. Now, when adding texture to your designs, you should be very, very, very careful. So, you know, we mentioned how important the principles are and how important the fundamentals are also to design. But you also need to understand that too much of it can make your design lose its entire message. Remember when I talked about form, I said use it in moderation, because if you put too much of it, it spoils the design. Imagine you're cooking spaghetti and you add too much salt. You will not be able to eat it, right? That's the same way it is on a design. When the texture is too much, it will not be consumable. It cannot pass the same message it's supposed to pass. Look at the two screens here we have. Now, for beginners, you can use texture as your background in your design, depending on the kind of design. And I also need you to understand that everything I'm explaining to you design-wise are relatable, and you can find them in real life context. They are all around us. That is why I said the designer is the eye of the community, because you see things differently, right? Now, sorry. Okay. You can see the difference in both screens. You can see that this has a texture in the background and it's smooth and easy on the eyes. This one, however, has textures everywhere. And you can see it's a struggle. Even if you visit such websites, you would want to run away quickly. Just be careful not to go overboard. Too much texture in a single design can quickly become overwhelming. Like I said, too much salt in your spag and you spoil it already. So the next one, balance. Now, isn't it interesting that balance is also a principle and balance is also a fundamental in design? That's to tell you how important balance is in design. Imagine a design that is not well balanced. You would not like to look at it more than once. Somebody in the chat said balance again. Exactly. Because it is important. Now, balance is the equal distribution of visual weights, more specifically, how much any one element attracts the viewer's eyes. So balance can be affected by many things. You can be affected by color, by size, by number, and by negative space. So you see that white space also plays a role in balancing your design. Now, mastering balance can be a bit tricky, right? You might be thinking, how do I get it right? How do I balance this? Something is missing in my design. I can't seem to put my hand on it. I think what the best thing to do at that time is pause for a minute, look at the design closely, and see where there's imbalance so that you can do what? Balance it, right? Now, you don't have to stress yourself to look for how to balance and everything. There are examples everywhere. There are lots of examples everywhere. Now, remember, we spoke about symmetrical designs and asymmetrical designs when we were talking about balance. And I said, symmetrical designs place the objects on even sides. Let me quickly show you again. See, symmetrical, the same objects on the left side. Asymmetrical, in sizes, change in sizes, right? We come back to balance again, and you see, this is a business card. Now, everything has been distributed evenly on both sides of the card. Same information on both sides. The way balance works is because each side carries the same weight for symmetrical balance. They are almost identical. Remember, I said almost the same thing aligned on both sides, almost the same thing. But asymmetrical shows a major difference. And I mentioned earlier, it could be image on one side and text on the other side. Now, in the example here, you see a logo on the left, the text on the right. This is a business card. And this is also a business card. Now, I have a question for you. If you are the client, right? And I designed this card, I designed card 1 and card 2 for you. Which would you pick? Which would you pick and why? If you want to speak, just raise your hands. I would. Okay, Bernard. Go on. All right, Bernard, you can unmute and speak. I don't think Bernard can hear me. Any other person want to try? Okay, David, go ahead. Unmute yourself, David. David, you can speak if you can hear me.
Yes, because
Okay.
number two just
You pick
stood out
number
to me.
2.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
so why are you picking number 2?
yes, when I picked number 2 because it draws more attention to me than number 1. I can focus on
Number
one part,
2,
then at the same time.
number 2 draws more attention, so it communicates more to you what you
Yes,
want than number 1. Okay.
yes.
Any other person has a different Thank you, David. Any other person has a different option? Francis, okay? Francis and Queen. Okay, Francis, after you, Queen. All right, Francis, go ahead. Francis, you can speak. Okay, Queen, speak. I think Francis is having issues. If you can hear me, Queen Francis, can you unmute and speak? Okay, Elijah. Can you speak? I can't hear you. David says card 2 because the balance between image and text is a 50-50 ratio. Perfect. Elijah says because card 2 is designed in a matured way. Nice. Because Olawale says card 2 because of its balance and organization. Okay. Kenneth says card 1, but I'm still learning the language. Okay. Comfort says you pick 2 because the words and logo are separate. Ayodeji will pick card 2 as well. Instantly sends me a quick attention due to the kind of balance. Card 1 card 1 because it looks more organized. See? Elijah, you say you're trying to unmute. Matthias says card 2 because it looks more attractive due to the balance. Chibuike says card 2 is more balanced, organized, and attractive. Olufemi, number 2 as well, because composition is fine, but not with card 1. So a lot of people are choosing card 2 because the logo and the name are in different positions, because it's simple to read, because it is easily organized, because it is evenly distributed. Okay. All right, let's go back into I'll work on unmuting you guys for the next question. I think there was a little, but okay. So, like I said, it depends on the kind of design that you're working on. That is what helps you choose between symmetric or asymmetric. Now, in balance, there's a thing called rule of thirds. You might have seen this in play, you might have heard about it, but it is evident in every design. In fact, it is more evident in pictures and the movies you watch. Rule of thirds. Look at the image on top here. You see a 3 grid line. 3 to the left, 3 downwards, right? And you see the image is placed in between the last column and the first column and the second column. More on the first column than the second column. Now, the reason for that is rule of thirds helps position your eye. Now, the natural human views or read things from the left to the right. And rule of thirds gives you that that composition, that appeal. It helps you focus on what should read from where your eye should move. And that's where contrast, emphasis, hierarchy, they come to play, because imagine your image is on the left, your text is on the right, another text is on the right, another one on, and everything is scattered. There's no unity. The eye of the person reading it will be going up, down, left, right, under, up, everywhere, which is going to be very disturbing. And the person would not want to look at your design, right? So rule of third allows you to be able to place your images. It helps you to easily select where you want to place your image. And it's under balance. Do you get that? Okay. Now, if you have any questions as to regard any of the things we've discussed now, from balance, form, texture, form, shape, and lines. If you have any questions right now, I would take your answers before we get to the general question and answer time. So anyone that has any question. Ayodeji. Okay, Ayodeji, you can speak. Hello?
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Deji. Okay, so what's your question?
Should I talk about lines?
No,
or what
so
would you prefer me to?
I said, do you have a question on line, shape, form, texture, and balance? Do you have a question? Is there something that is not clear for you that you need me to clarify?
No, none for now, sir. I have my notes, so
Okay.
they are all clear to me. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bernard. Okay, Bernard. Bernard, you can speak. Tessie, go ahead. I think Bernard is having issues. Okay, should we get a rule of third is not clear? Tessie, why can't you unmute? I'm coming, just a minute. Okay, 2 people, rule of third. I'm coming. Okay, so Bernard, you can speak now.
Hello.
Okay, so I want to ask about the rule of thought, and I want to know how we would achieve that in our design. Like when we're trying to design something, how are we going to do the measurements of, or this? How are we going to achieve the measurements of the rule of thought? And then is it like for all kinds of design? Is it for every design that you're doing that you use the rule of thought?
Okay, let me answer the second part first. So rule of thirds helps you to create balance. And it comes in play in designs that have images. So if your design have images, like you can see the example here, which is an image. So if there's an image, look at the second example where the image is now in a frame. Where that image
Yeah.
is now means that I can put my text on the right part of that frame and it fits perfectly, right? So rule of third mostly work when you're placing an image in a design. So if your design does not require an image, you don't have a problem with rule of thirds. Now, how do you measure the rule of thirds or the 3 times 3 grids on your design, right? So it's easy. If you look at the first frame here, you would see that there's a line, there are just 2 lines, and that 2 lines create 3 squares, and 2 lines vertical, 2 lines horizontal. So when we get to the part of showing you the interface of all the softwares that you can use to design, we show you that, so the softwares, first of all, they have rulers. They have rulers. So you can easily take a ruler and it will show you a perfect alignment, a perfect measurement for how you put the rules of thirds. Okay. Now, that's for the beginning stage. You get to a certain level where you can measure the rule of thirds with your eyes. You can tell, okay, this should be in this position, or it should be on this side, because you have done it over time, the measurement, you've done it over time. So you can now just tell that, okay, this will be great on this side. This is how it works. Okay, did I answer your question, Bernard? Sorry. Okay, yeah, I've done it. Okay, Tessie. Okay, thank you, Bernard. All right, Tessie, you can speak. You can unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself now. Go ahead.
Hello. So I have this
Okay.
these grid lines. They're on my camera because somebody told me to turn it on when I'm trying to take photography and product
That's
pictures. So the only problem I have now is I don't know if it is when the pictures are like out of the frame going towards the left that makes you understand that you're using the rule of third, or just the grid lines helps you just put your focus on the object anywhere you want it to be, so long as the grid lines are guiding you for the item to either be in the middle or on either side. Is there like a wrong way to use the rule of third?
Okay, so that's a very good question there, Tessie. So this is how rule of third work. You know, like I mentioned, like you mentioned that in your camera you have those grids. Even on your smartphone, your mobile phones have those grids as well. And those grids help you to position the image how you want it to be positioned. Either positioned on the left or on the right, or in the middle or at the top. It helps you to tell the kind of space you want to have. Do you want to have more head space, or do you want to have more leg space? Or you want to have more space on the left or more space on the right? That's what those grids are for. And they guide you. So you are the one that decides where you place your image, where you want to place it in photography. You get. But in design, you have to decide where is best for the image because of the other elements that would be in it. Okay, so did I answer your question? Tessie, did I answer your question? Yeah, there's no wrong way to use it. There's no wrong way to use it. There's no wrong way to use it. Okay. Olayemi, you can speak. Olayemi, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, please.
Good morning.
What's different between texture and shadow? And I did not really get the last balance that you explained. My network was bad.
Okay, sorry, come again.
So it was
you said
later
what's
I
the difference between
texture and shadow. What's
the difference between texture and shadow? Okay.
Yes, please.
So I said textures can be smooth, textures can be rough, textures can be hard, and textures can be soft, right? Which means that you can feel a texture if you touch something. Like I said, touch your phone, touch the wall in your house, touch your laptop, touch your seat, touch your desk. They all have textures. You can touch them, you can feel them, but you cannot do the same for a shadow. A shadow is a reflection. You cannot touch it. Just the same way you turn on your bulb in your room and it reflects on every part that the light touches, and every other part the light doesn't touch creates a shadow. That's because shadow is the direct result of the direct opposite result of light. So when light comes upon an object, it creates a shadow. Do you get it now? So a shadow is entirely different from a texture. All right, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ayodeji, go ahead. Okay, Justin says, please explain texture. Okay, now let me just do a short recap. So, like I said, texture can be on a physical surface. Now, look at your mobile phone. Look at the walls of your room or your apartment. Look at your school bag. Look at your seat, even your clothes. They all have texture. Texture can be smooth, texture can be rough, texture can be hard, or texture can be soft. Now, with this image here, you can see the wall has a different texture. The rug on the floor has a different texture. The wood on this chimney has a different texture. And this itself has a different texture. That's just texture. It is the physical quality of a surface. It can be a part of a three-dimensional object, or it can be through illustration, right? Now, remember, I also mentioned in the past that all elements and all fundamentals work hand in hand together. Like you see on the second object, you can see that the use of shadow helps to create form. If not, it will just be flat. It will not give it that real realism. To just be flat. Okay? So, and I also said textures can be used for background images, and depending on the kind of work you do, you can use the textures as you please. But remember not to go overboard. That's where I mentioned cooking spaghetti and adding too much salt. It spoils the food. Same way, too much texture spoils the design. You can see that here. So did I answer your question? Kenneth says, between A and B, you showed earlier, which is better? Okay, you're talking about the balance, symmetrical and asymmetrical. That was why I threw it open to you. One can be good to me and not good for you. But depending on the kind of design you're working on, that's when you can decide which of the balance you're using, symmetrical balance or asymmetrical balance. For me, because this is a business card, I will go with number 2, which is B, because number 2 best describes how a card should be arranged and how balanced it should be asymmetrically. Okay. Okay, great. Any more questions? Any more questions before we continue? More questions? Can everybody hear me? Okay, Kenneth, you have a question.
Yeah,
okay, what's your question, Kenneth?
Can you hear me? Yeah, this is not a question regarding what you just talked about right now.
Your network is glitching.
Now.
Sorry, Kenneth, can you? Okay, I can hear you now. Go on.
My question now.
Okay, Kenneth, I think you should just type. If your network is bad, just type the question. I will respond to it right away.
Hello.
Okay, any other person? Okay, Mudashir, right? Go on.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Good morning, I can hear you.
Good morning, sir. I want to ask, the texture, can it only be applied to images, or you can also apply them to text as well?
Okay, that's a very good question. So texture can be applied to images and can be applied to text. But remember I said, be careful not to go overboard. Now, look at this second screen on this example here that has a break on the screen. You see that the texture has been applied to the image and texture has been applied to the text. And that gives an overall overwhelming effect, right? So you have to select. You must have heard the saying, less is more. It applies to everything in design. So you decide, should I add texture to the text or should I add texture to the image? That decision helps you, right? And also, when adding texture to images, make sure it's a light texture so it doesn't completely change the outlook of the image. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Any other question? Okay, Kenneth says, is there a way you can get what you taught us in written form because of your network expertise? Sure. Yes, we'll get that to you. We'll get that to you. Don't worry. We'll share them on the platforms. Okay. Okay. Any other question? Any other question? Balance. Okay. Now we've talked about balance in 2 different scenarios. Talked about balance as a principle in design, and we've also talked about balance as a fundamental. And I mentioned that that's because balance is so important, but it is also super easy to understand. Balance is just how you arrange your objects in your design. So it can be symmetrical, which is evenly distributed on both sides. The same thing on the left, the same thing on the right. Or it can be asymmetrical, which is a different thing on the left and a different thing on the right. Now, if you look at this card on the asymmetric design example, what is showing on the screen now, look closely and look at this shape here. This yellow box and the 4 white boxes. Do they look familiar? Do they look familiar? Now, you see that it's easy to understand balance. Sometimes you can even do a sketch and say, oh, I want this to be 1 big box and 2 small boxes. Also, this is balance from the principles. Evenly distributed on both sides, symmetrical, and unevenly distributed differently on different sides. That's how asymmetrical works. Okay. Now, Peter says, what makes an image or an object 2D or 3D? Okay, so it's just as the word implies. Let me help you understand that better. 2-dimension means that you can only see 2 sides of it. That's flat. If you hold your phone on your hand straight up, you can only see the front and 1 side of it, not all sides. You can only see the front of the phone and 1 side of it. That's 2-dimensional. So 2-dimensional are mostly flat. Okay. Now, 3-dimension means that you can see 3 sides, or should I say all sides of the object or the image. And I gave a perfect example in form when we're talking about form. Yes, right here. This is 2-dimensional. This shape, this ball here is 2-dimensional. And this here is 3-dimensional because we added light and shadow. Okay, so I hope that's clear, Peter. Okay, great. Okay, one more question. What is a dimension in graphic design? Okay, so that's in Peter. So the dimension in graphic design, I think it varies in the kind of designs you want to do. If it's a newspaper, it has a different dimension. If it's for social media, the dimension is different. If it's for a business card, the dimension is different. So a dimension of a graphic design is dependent on the kind of design. Is it a calendar? It needs to have a different dimension from a newspaper. Is it a calendar? Is it a newspaper? Is it a magazine? Is it a brochure? Is it a branded document? Is it a packaging of a product? Every design have their different dimensions, and the dimensions, sometimes the dimensions can be the same, depending on the kind of design. So it's totally dependent on the kind of design that you're working on. Okay. All right, great. So, okay, let's move further. Please, could you stop drawing on my slide? Thank you. Okay. Yeah, rule of thirds, right? So, like I mentioned before, when you turn on your camera or your phone, it has these grids. If it's not there, it's in the settings. You can enable it or you can disable it. It just shows you where to decide or how to decide where you want to place your image. That's what rule of thirds do for you. Now, the next frame down there already shows you that this was the result from the arrangement. Now, the lines, you can see the grids are no longer there in the second picture. The grids are no longer there, just the image, perfectly placed. And like I said, if I put a text on the right-hand side of this, it gives a perfect composition. Okay? Now, remember, rule of thirds in photography is different from rule of thirds in design, right? In design, it helps you to decide where you want to place your image. In photography, it just helps you know where on how to create the spaces around the image. Okay. Now, putting it all together, the fundamentals are all about the bigger picture. What is the bigger picture? Putting it to work, making sure your design communicates the intent. The thing is, they can be in the very minute details of every composition. This insight into the fundamentals can be applied on almost any type of projects. Like I said, whether you are creating your own graphics or you're looking for simple ways to enhance your work, these fundamentals and principles can help you do that. Okay? Now, the bigger picture. The bigger picture is your design, right? Now you can see shape, you can see form, you can see balance, you can see texture, and you can see line. Now, on these designs here, can you point out one principle? Point out one principle and point out one fundamental. Let's start with the design with the guy on the skateboard. Who's going first? Anyone? Look at the designs closely. Look at them closely. Sometimes, okay, let me just give you a little hint. Sometimes, as a designer, when you see another design, you do a little study, a very short study of that design, so you can tell the elements that are in play. You can tell, okay, there's typography, okay, there's an image, okay, there's a rule of third, okay, there's this. You do all of that in your head. It's called decomposition, right? It helps you to tell what was used in a design. So you decompose the design to be able to create something like that as well. Okay, so Tessie, go on. Tessie, go ahead.
Hello. Okay, so in this first design, there's a lot of elements that were used there, like a lot of principles that were used there. Firstly, there was emphasis on the main object, like the main what they want us to see, and then the use of contrast, like in the colors, to emphasize the things that they want us to focus on. And then there's a scale used there, like they made the words that are emphasized a lot bigger than the ones that they do not want us to be focused on.
Very good, very good. Well done, Tessie. Okay, Olayemi, you can go on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, the line. And also
sorry, Olayemi, I think your network is breaking. You could type in the chat. I will read it out for you. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Okay, Festus, go on.
Yeah, I can see form, the drop shadow on the skateboard the man is riding on. I can see
Yeah.
texture on the background.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
hierarchy on the text.
Good.
And then there's a line across the positive purpose, and then perspective also.
Very good. Very good, Festus. Very good. Thank you. Okay, Ezine, go on.
Yeah, in the design we have, the first thing that it shows is unity, which is the composure of both the emphasis. There's a balance in the design that was created. We also have hierarchy, where it means order of importance, what they want us to see, and what the visual appeal, what should catch the attention of either the viewer or the designer. For the fundamentals, there's line. You can see that in the red space for the positivity purpose. We also then have a form, which we can see, and also the white spaces too, to let us sort of take away unnecessary things that might not be read. Don't want to read this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ezine. So I would also like to add before David, you go up next, but just in a minute, I would also like to add that line does not need to be physical. It can be the movement of your eyes from one place to another. If you look at the text, you see embrace, you see positivity, you see purpose. It has a descending line coming towards like the feet of the guy, right? That's an unseen line, okay? Okay, David, before you go on, let me read some of the comments. Adjoke says there's balance and there's form in the first image. Yes. I need somebody to tell me what form do you see in the image? What form? There's balance and shape in the first image. There's balance and form. I can also see balance in color. Perfect, Peter. Very, very observant. I like that. You can see perfect balance in the color. Agbaje says the object contains line. There is a drawing, an illustration. Contrast to from piece. Peter says there's balance, there's hierarchy, there's repetition of colors. Good. And alignment. Nice. Chelsea said the form most prominent is the shadow. Excellent. The form is the man. Francis, no. The form is on the man. That is where the shadow comes in, right? Because imagine you take away the shadow from the man and you take away the texture from the man. It will just be like a flat surface. So there's form on the man, there's form on the background, there's texture on the man, texture on the background as well, texture on the floor as well, right? Okay, so the second image. Okay, David, go ahead. David, you can speak.
For the second image, I notice there is emphasis on the now selling. There is also repetition of different buildings on it, along with slight shadows around the edges of the building. Then they also draw attention on smaller objects like the cars moving on the highway, along with
good.
So overall,
text written on the road.
Well, there's equal balance on it on the higher objects, which are the buildings, the smaller objects are the cars, and then the wordings that are slightly engraved on it.
Good, great. All right, thank you, David. Okay, so any other person? Rebecca says there's unity, there's balance, texture, and form. Bernard said there's also contrast in the second image. Very good. Ajibade says, rule of third allow the text at the side of the man to sit properly. Excellent. I like that observation, Ajibade. That was a very good one. Because if you look at the image, right, you see that it's placed close to the end of the design. It's like the end of the frame, close. Now, that's where rule of third comes to play. Rule of third could be one line here and one line here, and the guy is in that perfect position. Great one, Ajibade. There are also lines on the second image. Yes, they are. Remember, the skateboard on the first image is made of lines. The buildings on the second image are made of lines and shapes. So there are lines and there are shapes everywhere. Peter says, second image, there's contrast, hierarchy, and call to action. Okay, that's a good one. Simon says there's unity, there's balance, form, and good texture. Good texture. He qualified it. Nice. Rebecca says there's also a lot of color emphasis in the first image, but more image emphasis in the second image. Exactly. Nice one, Rebecca. Now, remember I mentioned that it varies in the kind of design you're doing. Imagine taking now selling and putting it, and this guy is standing there. You now ask yourself, are we selling the guy or the guy is selling something? Do you get? But because of how it is clear, you can tell what should be where, what should be on the other side. So good one. Oluwafemi says, from my point of view, I noticed the contrast in the text color in the second image. The shadow too.
Design starting from
good.
First writing down to the buy now is great.
If you want to speak, please just raise up your hand. I would give you the go ahead so that we don't have any distractions. Thank you. Okay. Oluwafemi, I was still reading your text. So in the first image, there's contrast in the text, the images, and shadow beneath the skateboard. Very good as well. The second image, there's variety in the building. Nice. Peter says, looking at the hierarchy of the design, starting from the first writing down to now buying is great. Thank you, Peter. Any other person? Any other person? There's unity, there's emphasis, and there's form in the second image from Kabiesi. Victor says there's unity, very obvious in the second image, as no part is more important than others. Good. Ayo says in the second image, there's emphasis on buy now. And also buy now carries hierarchy, which is good. Juliet says a lot of lines was used and shadow was clear and there's unity. So Juliet, can you specify, is it the first or the second design? Bernard, there's texture in color in the first image. Yes, on the floor where the guy is. On the floor where the guy is, there's a texture. I can see that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so one last. Okay, second image. All right, thank you, Juliet. Second image contains white and 3D shapes. All right, great. Okay, so now I have new sets of designs. I have new sets of designs here. and I need you to tell me. So on the first design, the woman and the child eating bread. Tell me how many principles you can see. How many principles? How many principles you can see? On the first image by the left. How many principles? Adiola says rule of third. If you want to speak, you can just raise up your hand. I would give you the floor to speak, okay? White space, contrast. Okay, Adiola, you can speak. Tessie says you can see 5 principles. Okay, Tessie, name the principles you can see. You can speak, you can speak.
Hello. So let's see here that there is hierarchy because the words were written on the other words. And then there's contrast here, the colors, the most important words were written in a different color. And then there's scaling the important images to be to the important words to be bigger than the other ones. And I think that's the first that I said.
Okay, well done, Tessie. Thank you. Julia says you can see contrast, emphasis, scale, unity, and hierarchy. Okay, so while you're sending your answers on the chat, I will also need you to explain what you can see and where, right? So this set of questions will do more of speaking. But if your network is bad, you could just type and let me know. I'll speak. I'll do the reading for you. Okay. So Julius, can you please point out where you saw contrast, emphasis, scale, unity, and hierarchy? Yes, there is white space. Balogun produce. There's white space. Very good. Scaling in text ratio. Yes, Sule. Nice. Should be K. Unity, shape, contrast, and scale. That's 4. Ajoke. Emphasis, hierarchy, balance, scale, and unity. Okay, Fabius, you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in the image, I can see what's it called? Hierarchy.
Okay. Where
there's also emphasis on, what we want to see, like the focal point, the image where it shows the woman eating the bread, there's a balance. If you look at the text, how it's, the lines that are not visible when the creating superior and the creating and superior, like they are both on the same line, they are centralized. Then there's another thing I noticed. What was it called?
Okay.
The contrast, like color. Can you hear me?
Contrasting color. Yes.
Yes. There's the green, the black, like that. So that's what I
Very, very good. Very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter.
Peter. Okay. Peter, go on.
I can also see emphasis on our mission on the first image and creating superior too. I can see three form, the 3 dimension on the product. Also bread. On the bread too. I can see three dimension too. And I can see line on the background.
Yeah.
Which is texture. So then the hierarchy of the whole design, starting from that mission, creating Superiors, Africa brand, and the rest to the product, Actually, it's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Peter. Chibuike, you can go on.
Good morning. In the first image, I can see. In the first image, I can see unity. Yes, I can see unity. That is same color, same size, different color. I also see contrast. It helps create the balance in color, in scale, and in layout. I can also see the balance because the image is in the right ratio. And I can also see the shape. So that's what I can see in the first image.
Okay, thank you so much, Chibuike. Ezine. All right, Ezine, you can go on.
Yes, in the image, the first thing I notice is the contrast, which helps in the readability of what is there in the work. That's how we are able to adjust the letters. Then there are emphasis on what you need to know first, which is creating the superior African brands that you just pointed out, which is the mission of the brand. Then there is form, which helps to give life to the butter there, like that shadow close to the product, which is at that point. Then there is line. I can see line, which helps to indicate that at the back it's a window with sort of a covering, like a family setting. Then the rule of third helped us to know where to place the mom and the son. Yes, and also the products in front of them. Then we also have the white space, which you taught us about, and there is repetition of colors too in the design. Then there is a balance, which gives it the visual appeal that is required for anyone.
Very good, very good, very good. Okay, the last answer, Olawale, go on.
All right, thank you. I'm Abdurrahman Olawale by name. So in the first picture, I can actually see contrast in text, like the sizes of the text. From our to mission, you can see that our mission, they are in different sizes. And the creating superiors and other text too, they're in different sizes. We can compare the creating superior to African brands that inspire consumers every day. And also emphasis, talking about the impact, like what they are really trying to pass to us. We can see that you can see that the mother and the child, they are trying to like take a bite of the bread from the bread they are eating.
Yeah.
The emphasis, like the message they are trying to pass. And the forms, you can see the shadow through the knife. I think, yeah, through the knife and the product. I mean the butter, the golden penny butter there. And also the rule of thought. The way the picture of the mother and the child is positioned and the positioning. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, so that would be okay, so before the second image, I think is plain, is clear pretty much, and I like the fact that you guys understand what we've talked about. So we'll go into questions now fully. Any questions you have? So before anybody else, let me just take this question from Esther. Esther says, please explain on contrast and emphasis. Okay, so let me just take you back memory lane a bit. Contrast. Now, I mentioned that when people say a design pops, it's contrast that gives it that feel. Contrast is what creates that popping nature of a design. Contrast is what makes it pop, right? Now, contrast can be in shape. Like I think Olawale was the person that answered the last question. He said there's contrast in the text. Contrast can be in shape, contrast can be in color, contrast can be in size, contrast can be in layout, as you've seen. Now, emphasis. Emphasis is how it can also be in size, weight, position, color, shape, and style, but it refers to what you want to drive attention to, the focal point. Now, let's go back to the designs, right? If you look at now selling, when you look at that design, that's the first thing you see. The first thing you see is now selling. That's the emphasis. Now, the background where now selling is sitting on is a sky blue, and now selling is white. That creates what? Contrast between the colors, white and the sky blue, right? And also creates contrast between now selling and the buildings. So Esther, I'm sure I answered your question now. Okay. Okay, so now you can ask your questions. Any questions? Go ahead. If you have a question, you can just raise up your hand and I will allow you to speak. Okay?
Please, can you hear me? Please, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you, Glory. Go ahead.
Hi. Okay, please, I would like to ask you to explain hierarchy. Because when you're mentioning
You said?
hierarchy, I don't even understand. Even seeing the
You said
designs.
you like
I'd
to
like
ask.
you to like,
Sorry, you said
yes,
you like to ask
so
what?
that I can understand more. Thank you. You to
Okay,
explain hierarchy.
hierarchy. Okay, all right. So before I do that, if you check through the chat, you will see the links to the WhatsApp group. There's a link to the WhatsApp groups, and there's also a link to the general slides. These slides that we've used, there's a link to it, and there's a link to the video recording on WhatsApp. So you can, for those of you that say, "Oh, your network was bad," you can rewatch the training. There's a link to watch on YouTube, or you can just drop a message for me, and I will have the links sent to you. Okay, we'll drop the links again. All right. Okay. Glory said to explain hierarchy. This right here in this design, in this second design, now selling has hierarchy because hierarchy helps you create focal points, right? And I also said here that hierarchy is very important in your design because it helps the reader to know what's important from what. And everything cannot be important and have the same size in a design. Because I mean, all the information on the design are important, but they all cannot have the same sizes, right? So, I remember because of that element of being able to understand what is more important than the other makes hierarchy one of the most important principles in design because it just gives ranking to your design elements. Take a look at this example here. On the left, there's absolutely no hierarchy. Everything is the same size. It also looks good. On the right, there's hierarchy, and everything is evenly distributed in different sizes and different placements. So hierarchy does that for you. Now, let's come back to the design. On this design, you can see there's hierarchy. The logo is what you need to see first. And even on the text, there's hierarchy. Jairo Montes is bigger than the owner, the title under it, and the address. Same thing here. Positivity and purpose is bigger than everything else. And you can still see it repeated on the floor. Now selling is bigger than everything else here. But you can still also see buy now, because I mean, buy now is also important. But now selling is big. You can see creating superior what? Superior African brands. So you see how hierarchy works. On the other design, it says quality brands. That's hierarchy. Imagine if on this first design and on the second design, all the text are the same sizes. No any difference in anything. That tells you that there is no hierarchy. It's fine, the reader will read it, but they will not give importance to anything. But now that the hierarchy is on superior, is on creating superior, they can now tell that, okay, these people are emphasizing creating and superior brands. Do you get it now? So any other question?
Thank you so much.
If you have a question, you're welcome, Deborah. Glory, sorry. Okay. Abby, you wanted to ask a question? Any other question?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, Mudashir, go on.
Like, looking at emphasis and hierarchy, they are looking similar to me. Like, I want to get the difference between the two.
I actually agree that they look similar. Now,
so is there any difference?
Yes, there is. Let's roll up. Let's roll up a bit. Roll up all the way back. Hierarchy. Hierarchy just helps you to distribute what should be important from what, and it helps your design to look good. Hierarchy puts your most important elements in a bigger size or in a different color. Do you get? On this design here, on this design here with this man, you can see that embrace has a different color, and that makes it stand out. Do you get? Now, that's hierarchy, right? Emphasis. Emphasis can also be, so emphasis helps you create focal points. On the second design, on this one, on now selling, the emphasis is now selling, but hierarchy is on available in 300 square and 500 square meters. Do you get? Hierarchy helps you create order of importance. Emphasis helps you differentiate the important things from the others. Is it clear now?
So that means in hierarchy, it's not necessarily it is the biggest words in the design.
No. It can be big.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it can be big, but it's not necessary. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Tessie is raising her hand. Okay, Tessie, go on.
So what I just wanted to add to what he just said now about hierarchy and emphasis, because you just mentioned now that it doesn't have to be bigger. So when you arrange your hierarchy, like in the order of importance where you want the text to come, and you don't emphasize, like make it very different from the other text, like you don't make it big or you don't make the colors different, how then are we going to see the emphasis on that, on your order of hierarchy?
So that emphasis is what creates that difference. Now, look at this second design here. You can see that hierarchy is on quality food.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that if it is same colors as the rest, or if it's same size as the rest, how then are we going to see the emphasis?
So you have to create a difference. It doesn't have to be the same color, even if it's the same size. Now, this is why I'm giving you this example. Look at it. Leading food company is in different color, and you can see it's also italicized.
Yes.
So, but every other thing there is the same, is the same size. To be the leading food company is emphasized. In Africa. Everything lies with quality brands hierarchy. Okay. Okay, Queen,
yes,
you can go ahead.
So
right,
I would like to ask that when I have a project to design, is it necessary that I add all the principles and fundamentals, or I can, depending on the project I'm looking to design, I can just highlight the principles and fundamentals that will make sure that my work stands out or is designed perfectly? Or do I need to incorporate all the fundamentals and the principles you highlighted?
Okay, so that's a very good question, right? So this is how it works. See, look at this design. You can tell that they are all the principles and they are all the fundamentals, right? Now, when you are designing, don't make a checklist and say balance. Look at the design and say, hey, there's balance. And say contrast. Look at it and say contrast. It comes to play automatically. And guess what? All of them can be in your design. You know, like I said, they are not things you bring and come and be applying, like salt, Maggi, pepper. No. As you are designing, the principles and the fundamentals are coming into play. Let me go a bit further. So look at this first design on the screen, right? After the design is done, you now have to look at it again and then now pick what should be added and what should be removed. In doing so, in looking at it, you can tell, okay, this thing is what is more important. Embrace is what is more important, because positivity and purpose is out there for everybody. But until you embrace it, you cannot actually achieve positivity and purpose, right? So in your context, in your design, you have to understand what the order of importance in your text, what needs emphasis, what needs hierarchy, what needs texture, what needs form, what needs a shadow. Because if you look at the second design here, you see that there's a shadow on selling, which shows that the building is casting a shadow on selling, but there's no shadow on now, simply because selling is what is touching the building. That's why the shadow is casting on what, or is casted on selling. So as you put your design into place, all these elements and principles, they fall into place one by one, but you have to be mindful of them so that you don't misappropriate them. Okay, And also try as much as possible not to overdo it. Remember, I said if you put too much salt in the spag, it spoils. I hope I answered your question, Queen.
Perfectly. Thank you, sir.
All right, great. Okay, Busayo, go on.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. I can hear you, Busayo.
Okay. I just want to I've not really been contributing, but I've been seeing the whole slide, although I came a little bit late. So
okay.
Basically everything that's been said. Hello, can you hear me? Everything that's been said
I can hear
here.
you.
So which means if one is designing, if I want to design now, all these come, like you said, the bigger picture, everything comes into it as one.
Exactly, which is what I just explained now. Everything,
okay,
all the principles, all the fundamentals are they come to play in the bigger picture. Now you can see that
the shape,
there's balance
form,
in the text,
balance,
the
texture,
shape,
and lines.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you. I can see your feedback. Okay. Somebody's asking, what can we use to create this design best? Is it Canva or Adobe Premiere? Okay, so we'll get to that part on Thursday, where we talk about the different softwares and their interface. So Justin, it's not just CorelDRAW. You can use Photoshop, you can use Illustrator. In fact, these two designs here were done in Photoshop. Okay, these two were done in CorelDRAW. But if I don't tell you, you cannot define that by looking at it. All right. Chelsea, says, is there no homework for us to practice today? We are excited to begin already. Okay, in about 5 minutes. Okay, so yes, there will be birthday graphics. Okay, I will put that in mind. We'll do that tomorrow. We're trying to round up now because time is not really. Okay, so Adiola, keep this question for me, okay? Adiola, can you hear me? Okay. All right. Just keep this question for me. I will get you a birthday design. In fact, I will get you 3 birthday designs and use them to explain for you tomorrow. Okay. Just remind me. Tessie, you're asking for homework because you want to get started, right? So there's still more. Remember, I mentioned there's typography. I mentioned there's color theory because as you can see in this slide, there's a color and there's a text. The same thing on all the design, text and color, and layout and composition, layout and composition. So those are like 3 major topics that we need to also understand before we start creating. Remember, I mentioned in the beginning that every building has a structure. Every structure has a foundation, and that foundation is the theoretical part, which is why we're taking this. So right now, we are still laying the foundations to design. When we're done laying this foundation, then we can start building. That is where we start to get into the design softwares and start designing and go into the different kinds of softwares. Okay? Yes. So for tomorrow, we will touch on typography and color theory so that you can understand how to pick the right colors. Now, look at this first design. You can see that there are 3 colors here. There is red, there is dark gray, and there is light gray, right? Now, that's before the guy. Then the guy himself has the brown that has like 2-3 shades. The brown on his outfit and the brown color of his bag. You need to know how to pick your colors. Then you need to understand typography. You need to understand typography and how to use it, how to select typefaces, how to select fonts. Okay. Busayo, your hand is raised. Do you still have a question? Busayo, you still have a question?
Yes, should I say a question now? Can you hear me?
Yes, go on. I can hear you.
Okay, the link on the water, the link that was shared on the group about WhatsApp, I'm unable to join. It's showing failed. So I don't know if anything can be like we get the info in our mail. Can the link be shared on our mail so that we just join direct from there?
Okay. I'll communicate that. Thank you everyone for your compliments, and I'm getting them. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So okay, the last there are 2 more hands. Okay, so Bisola and Victor. Okay, Bisola, go ahead real quick so that we can round up.
All right. Good morning. Thank you so much for the impactful class.
Go on, Bisola.
All right. Good morning. Thank you so much for the impactful class. Please, I would like to ask the last design. I want to confirm if there was a shadow used at the background.
The last design, is it any of them displaying now?
No, not this one, the other one. After this, yes, the first one. No, not this one.
Okay.
Yeah, creative
The one
superior.
with
Was there a shadow used at the background? Because I feel according to what you explained in class, you were like shadow is like a reflection. So I really want to understand this shadow. Like, and was there a shadow used?
Okay, there's no shadow used here. That's just a color overlay. Okay. So there's no shadow on that background. It's just a color overlay. It's just a color overlay. Okay, I hope I answered you. Okay. All right, thank you. So Victor, real quick.
Okay, I'm sorry. Good morning.
Good morning. Peter, I'll get back to you shortly.
Okay, I just want to talk about the color application.
Okay.
Like from this image we have here now, the first one is color gradient, while the other one is solid colors. So is there any specific application between both? How would it feel if we like interchange them? Would this like still bring out the same beauty is bringing out?
Okay, so let me answer your question in rounding up. So how you decide the elements that play in your design is dependent on the kind of image and the kind of design you want to create. Now, if you look at these 2 designs very closely, you see that this other image here doesn't have enough space up, which means that if we take off the solid background and put a gradient, there will be like a disparity, some kind of open space. But on the first design, you can see that overlay helps to create contrast between the color and the image, right? So yeah, when you're selecting solid background or gradient or whatever color, it should be dependent on the kind of design you're doing and the images you have. So thank you very much. With that, we've come to the end of the class. I would hand over to Mrs. Chidima right now. So thank you very much, everyone. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, everybody. How was it? How was the class?
It was awesome.
Hope it was. I love that. In
So
fact,
great.
so
It was great also.
great. Awesome.
It
Awesome. So
was,
thank you.
yes, it was very, very explanatory.
This was
Oh,
awesome.
thank you. Thank you. So thank you for staying till the end of the class. So just to go over what we mentioned for the benefits of Sorry, interrupting our class. All right, so just to go over what we mentioned at the beginning for the benefit of those who joined in late. So for the remaining days, that's Tuesday to Thursday, would convey at 9 a.m. exactly. Then I made a mistake in the last time. I mentioned we would close up at 3, but we made an adjustment for the sake of grasping everything that will be taught. So we'll stop by 12 since it's a virtual class. So the physical class will now be more detailed, okay? So 9 a.m. to 12 noon, we'll have our classes every day. So we want to take a brief screenshot. So please, can everybody turn on their videos so that we can quickly take like a virtual photo shoot. So please turn on your videos quickly so we can have a picture being taken. All right, so also, like I mentioned at the beginning, so every participant now, you'll be moved into the WhatsApp group so that we can have a free flow of communication. So from the WhatsApp group, there's a general group. For some of us who have already joined, you see we created a community. So there's a WhatsApp group for every member who's a participant. Then we have the cohorts. We'll be divided into 2 groups so that we can teach effectively and then we can get to interact with our instructors one-on-one and then do the practical classes. So for the practical classes, which will start next week, we'll have a batch of 100 people per day. You must have seen the details of the location in your emails, but we'll keep on sending emails to you every day to remind you. So now you'll get another set of emails from us, if not today, by tomorrow. You'll be split into 2 groups. So please note your cohorts. We have 2 cohorts, cohort 1, cohort 2. So you will have your own specific timetable. You would also have details of the curriculum and then what will be taught per day. So please endeavor to join the WhatsApp group. We'll share the links once again in the emails. We'll also share it on the group. So I know somebody's asking about the slide. The slides for today's class will be dropped in the WhatsApp group. So please make sure you join the WhatsApp group, okay? We also noticed that some people could not enter into Zoom. So please and please, every day, if you come in early, the Zoom can only take 100 people. Afterwards, the next batch of 100 people will be moved automatically to YouTube. So if you want to be on Zoom, if you want to see your instructors, if you want to chat with the instructor, who is that, please? Oh, you are distracting us. You are distracting us, please. So if you want to interact with your instructors and other members of the class, make sure you're on Zoom. So it's a first come, first serve. Once we get to 100 on Zoom, automatically every other person will move to YouTube. Then finally, I know that every material we use or will be using will be dropped on the WhatsApp group. So the important groups, the general WhatsApp group, then the cohorts, that will be sent to you when it's sent in your email. So please check your emails. Some people said they didn't get the emails. Make sure you check your spam. Make sure you check what's your spam always. So if you still have issues, make sure you can reach out to any of us. You can send a mail to info@projectideas.ng. So I think that'll be all for now. we'll call it a day. Thank you so much for attending today. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.